nice quick loop around who you are and what school you are at or which department you're working for or as a
In a microphone, please.
We'll pass the mic to you. Kevin, you can go ahead and start since you got a mic.
Great. Is this on? Yeah. Kevin Gates, Liberty District Supervisor, Maintenance Supervisor.
Either way you want to go.
Christy Mendoza, I am middle school science at Liberty.
Dave Bogart, Principal at West Star.
Deb Riley, I'm representing Estrella.
Connie Crowley, teacher over at West Star.
Lindsay Boris, Principal Estrella.
Diana Harness, reading interventionist at Las Brisas and Freedom.
Keith Johnson, guest teacher at Estrella Mountain.
John Moreno, Director of Technology.
Natasha Camp, Assistant Superintendent for Educational Services.
All right, Beth, if you will pull up the.
You should have said your name, Beth.
Oh yes, and we got Beth Strickler.
Beth Strickler, Executive Director of Finance.
She remembered who she is, so that's good. That's good. All right, Beth, if you will pull up the 5-year, we'll actually start with that.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that we do is we look at not only what our projected increase is for the year we're in, and then how does that money potentially get spent out in the various program areas of the district. We also then try to look at that as a longer view, over several more years. So in this case, we're really showing 3 more years because it gets real iffy. We usually do 5 years about this time, and we still will. But the assessed valuation of homes, the interest rate, the inflation, the economy, it's really, really loose, if you will, of what our expected enrollment is past 25, 26 until we just see how it's going to right size itself. So we've had to adjust. Last year, we were expecting for this year to be right around maybe 5% growth. It's almost like a little less than 2% is now what the new projection is. So it's practically maintaining where we are. And that's really a lot to do with the value of cost of homes and those inflation costs, and just it's not, we just aren't expecting as much growth. And then for the next year, expected to go up a little bit, but still not as high as what we were expecting before. So some of essentially the additional increase of dollars we were expecting in the coming couple of years, we're really not going to be seeing that as much. What's disappointing about that is we have kind of outgrown where we are with particularly some of our district departments, and so they were really hoping to get some ease, and I don't know that we'll see that, in this year or next year. The other thing that you see in yellow, probably have a better idea by the middle of December where we will stand with qualifying for a new school. With the new school, I would say at least $150,000 of additional, staffing, $250,000 of additional staffing to be able to launch a new school. So we all have to leave a little ease on that. It probably will help us budgetarily if that actually happens as an opening in 25, 26. It actually works better for us budgetarily. That doesn't necessarily mean when the kids will actually come and when we actually need to open the new school. So this is something that's going to be in flux of how we look at it. And then another aspect is we look at it by individual programs. So up here you can see the program area of instruction. To the right, the total change in revenue in line 15. If you can make that view just a little bit larger, maybe 150 or 200%. There we go. So we take that total amount of the change in revenue. So we already know it's been budgeted in the past. And then anything new revenue that's coming in, that's what that $2 million represents. And then we said if we want to budget according to kind of the categories, the percentages we have done historically. So we aim for 58 to 60% of our money going directly to instruction. Instruction is the category that's where the teachers are. That's where the people who directly touch kids in the classroom, that's that program. And then if you scroll down just a little bit, Beth, I don't know if you've got the most recent one, because I did close out some of those lines, but that's okay.
Got it right here.
Okay, fabulous. You can then see, let's see, line 100. All right, so go back to instruction. That's a little too far. Thank you, Crystal. All right. So then on line 47, nope, we're still a little farther up. And we're trying to get to instruction and see. There we go. All right, so total program instruction. There's how much is kind of penciled in for how much we would need to spend. So an example of that is we need to hire additional teachers for our growth. We'll need to hire additional teachers because we are intending to bring our class sizes, bring them down from what they are right now. So that's more money there, and it's also some additional money for our CHAMPS teachers, right? So we changed that. That's a little adjustment as well, and we also always save some budgeted dollars for new staff that may need to have sometime during the year when we have to split classes because class sizes, don't come in perfectly, and all of a sudden they got really big and we need another teacher. So all of that is built into that. Plus, we start in our conversation with how we can have 2% compensation increase. And then this group says, oh, we'd like to have more of that, or we'd like to have less of that because we care about these other priorities instead. So this is just a way we look at that to say all of these budget interests. And so we're going to come back and we're going to look at this. It's going to be on paper for you to look at this next time, because what we'll do is the budget interests we're going to be talking about today, we will start to sort them by these different categories. So if we had $100,000 in student support to spend, but we have $500,000 of budget interests in that category, that would tell us that, oh, well, we may need to choose between the things that came in with that category. Choose between them first before we prioritize them compared to other programs. So I just wanted you to see that we will always look at it from a long-term view, as well as a program view, and another way we'll be looking at is at the school level. What this will show us is we had said we're aiming to spend about 60% in instruction. And if you look at line 37, it really is showing that with that dollar amount, it's actually about 62%. So overall, you'd say, well, that's a good thing if you spend more money on instruction, but that means 2% of that available budget is going to be not available to another program area that might have to be either reduced, or if we didn't have anything for that budget program area and it all balances out by the bottom line, that's really all that matters, is by the bottom line. It just gives us an idea by program area, are we trying to put all of our money here and we've not spent anything on plant management, plant operations and maintenance? We just need to make sure that we're growing that area as well, or we need to grow transportation or something else. So we just try to keep that balance and a balanced view of it. All right, so any questions about that? I think we're going to end up digging into that really more when we finalize some of our budget interests. We're going to save our time really to talk about budget interests today.
I see this, the permanence guest teacher there. Are the regular subs, are they budgeted out as well?
Right, so everything that we have right now in our budget is essentially in our budget for next year, and we don't have to do any talking about that unless you say, I'd like to be able to buy this new thing. I don't see enough money for it. So what I could consider is if we reduce this other thing that we already have in our budget, and that makes some room in the budget for this other new thing you want to buy. So right now, what we pay our guest teachers is already budgeted. But if it's a budget interest from the committee to say, oh, we need to recruit even more of them, we think that needs to go up in pay, then we would generate a new budget interest, target how much money that would be, And that would be something that we would consider in our prioritization. Anything else? Beth, did you print out the budget interest for them? I just want to make sure we're ready for that when it's time.
I did not, I can, very easy.
And send it to Athena and ask her to do it for us. All right, so the next thing I wanted to show you was school staffing expenses. So we use this document. We look at the total enrollment by each school, and we say times the amount of revenue we get per student. So that it's just a different way of looking at our budget. The last one we looked at it from a program perspective. Those are categories of the budget. And then the next thing we're going to be looking at is the by school. And what we'll do then is we'll say, oh, by school, with the number of students that come in, that's about how much revenue is generated for that school. And then we'll look at how are those schools staffed. Are you able to find that? Yeah. And then how are those schools staffed? And then approximately how much money does it cost if we had a half-time reading interventionist, or if we had a whole full reading interventionist? Or then that's when we start to look at, well, smaller schools have a little less staffing than larger schools. So example is at Blue Horizons, our largest school, they have an extra half a position for a day custodian. They have an extra half a position for a school secretary because their enrollment is so large to meet up with that capacity. And then when we go to a smaller school like Liberty, who's projected to have 303 students next year, it's more expensive. It's actually inefficient to have a smaller school, right? Because you still have to have administration, you still have to have a reading interventionist, all the supports that are consistent across all of our schools. So we know going into it that that's likely going to have a negative number for the revenue that comes in for the school, and the staffing is actually there, and it does. So if you scroll to the bottom, I'll show you this. All the way to the bottom. We're really upside down about $200,000 for how we're currently staffed. So, that's just, we know that. And then if we go all the way over to our largest schools, when they have end up having a little bit larger class sizes, they tend to meet the class size target instead of being under the class size target. That means they're actually staffed a little more efficiently. And then we have some budget that is kind of generated, and that offsets the smaller schools. When we see a larger number like that over at Blue Horizons, it gives me pause to think, larger school, is there something else they need for additional support at that school that we need to be considering? When they've got 5 kindergarten classes and 5 first grades, is 1 reading interventionist enough compared to when we had 1 or 2 at some of our smaller schools and they had a full-time reading interventionist? So we start to look at some of those things. So I'm going to have you, I'm going to send this information home for you to just kind of look at it as homework, to just ask your own questions and then come back the next time when we start to do the prioritization, because then you could balance your thinking out with, I think we need math interventionists. I think we need them at all schools. When you look at this and you say, can we really afford it at the smallest schools to the largest schools in terms of a fairness issue? Or, when we look at the program budget of the district, like in the 5-year plan, can we really afford that much in that category, or do we need to rethink that budget interest? Okay, so I'm just giving you some background for this, for you to study that, and our really hard conversations and discussions will come in about 5 days. All right, questions about this, or do you want to see something in particular with kind of school by school? All right, so the draft budget interest We have now received all that you have submitted so far, right? And when we looked at that, we noticed that some of them were similar and duplicate, so we'll be looking at those today. And then we saw that some of them had a little more explanation, some of them we had some questions about. So we thought, well, if we just read them and we understand them or don't understand them, that means that anybody else who's looking at them also may have some similar questions. So I think our job today, the primary use of our time today, is we're really just going to go through these one at a time, make sure we all understand that. We can ask any questions about those budget interests. And where we see some that are similar, we will start to say, can we just combine those and eliminate one and maybe combine the sponsors on that? Or it could give you an idea. It's like, oh, I'd actually like to adjust the one that I proposed, or we'd like to do another one and just a variation of that because it's made you think of something new, all right? Or a new one altogether. So you all can still be submitting those, you know, even today, this evening. And have you struggled to pull that up, Beth?
I have it. I lost my connection. I have it.
And did Athena respond to you? Because they're going to need to see these. They're not going to be able to look at
I
these.
have a copy, but it's like in 2 font.
I have reading glasses. I don't know about the rest of you.
So I sent it to her and asked her to print it for the group.
All right. Did she respond though?
I just sent it, so.
Yeah. All right. Well, why don't you pull it up and we'll look at the first one in big view, and then we'll make sure we've got copies for you. Beth, you'll just here we go. Will you send that to Natasha, and we'll get some support there. Natasha, I'm afraid you have to play a little bit with the print. All right, so if you can work to print that for us. All right, well, let's look at the first one. Let's see who the sponsor was. Stephanie, and she's not here today. Athletic director stipends for teachers. So one of the first things we'll do is we'll actually get rid of all acronyms, because not everybody knows what the acronyms are. And this is going to extracurricular. She's thinking it's going to cost about $12,500. And I think this would be looks like she's saying this would be probably an impact. I'm guessing she's saying that's going to be a relief to administrators, because previously we had athletic director stipends at all schools, and the administrators weren't doing that responsibility. So when we added assistant principals, one of the ways that we budgetarily, we reduced the stipends for athletic directors, and for the schools that had full-time assistant principals, they, between assistant principal and principal, they took on those duties and responsibilities. So that's my understanding of this one. I'm representing Stephanie, so I don't know if I'm doing a good job. Does anybody have questions about that or comments about that? It doesn't mean that you're liking it or confirming you want to have this. It's just you're trying to make sure you have a good understanding of what that budget interest is. Does anybody have any questions?
So right now, is it like 4 of them?
So we have 7 schools, and I think you're right, 4 of the schools have full-time assistant principals, so 4 of the schools, so we'd have to say 4 times whatever that. Yeah. Okay, so at 5, so it'd be for 5, correct. All right. Any other comments or questions? Okay. All right, let's go to the next one. Athletic restoration. Kendra, can you talk about this one for us?
Sure. This one of the things that happened last year was a reduction in some of our athletic teams due to.
Kevin, we find the mic.
Is it on? Okay. One of the things that occurred last year was a reduction in teams for athletics due to our overrides not passing. So something that was brought to us was restoring some of the teams. For example, last year we had soccer boys and girls, basketball boys and girls, volleyball boys and girls. Boys volleyball was one of the programs that was cut. There was boys baseball, girls softball. Girls softball is not occurring this year. And then we also had A and B teams in several of the sports. So with the override passing, since that was one of the things that was on the chopping block or reduction due to the override, something that we felt was just good faith for our voters is to bring those things back. So
can you say, is this budget interest combined, adding an additional season, moving from 3 seasons to 4 seasons is one, and then the other interest I heard you say is to add a whole team strategy. So we had 1 team, and you would want to move to 2 teams for all seasons.
just bringing back what we had last year. So in volleyball, that would be bringing back the boys volleyball and bringing back the second team for girls volleyball, because that always has a higher interest at this point in time, given what it is.
Season.
So that's the season. The other one was bringing back the B teams for boys and girls basketball, because there's just so many kids trying out. We had our coach that didn't want to cut, so he kept 18 kids.
And is all of that, you just said, is that all of that in this budget interest, or those 2 separate budget interests?
It's all one, is restoring what we had last year, bringing all those items back to what it was prior to cutting them due to reductions because of the override.
Can you pose any questions or comments to Kendrick?
Oh, I brought this back from my athletic director. That one was not mentioned. So if that was something that was cut that is not here this year, then we would like to add that as well.
We make a note of that and then work with Beth to adjust,
Yes. Yes.
the budget interest.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, next, line 4.
Yes, Dave. Thank you.
All right, our sponsor for this, this was an idea that came out of Teacher Advisory Group, and I know that somebody helped somebody write this, but it was this idea that we might be able to have a better time recruiting teachers to us if we got more student teachers, and we might get more student teachers if we paid a stipend directly to the student teachers for their work. There is some consideration that we have. There's another certification model where the intern certification, and that's when they just come to work for us, they start getting a real salary, and they're basically bypassing their student teaching. So this would be for the people who say, no, I think I need student teaching. I want to keep doing my student teaching, but a little bit of something, stipend might incentivize me to come to Liberty. So that's the idea. And if you will scroll over just so they can see the program description, really I think what I'd be asking you is to read that to make sure that what I just said is clear. Do you understand that from what's written? And then is there anything else that you would want to add to that? Notice it says, how much will that cost? It says increase. So the person who submitted this didn't say, what is a reasonable amount? So I think that's what we probably should talk about here is let's fill in the missing information, because you all won't be able to make a decision on this unless we said, what do we think is an amount? Keeping in mind, we don't have a lot of money to play with our budget increase. So there's not a lot there, but are there other districts that do this? I don't know the answer to that. I heard that it's happening, but I couldn't tell you who or where.
It does happen in other provisions. So when you apply for an internship in those other categories, there is a stipend that they can take. Because they typically aren't at home or on a farm, so they try to help out with that. Isn't there universities that were helping with that too?
Universities help with student teacher placement. I don't know if they're helping with coming up with stipends. Does anybody have a recommendation for an amount we could put in here as a tentative starting place? $1,500. Anybody suggesting we go up or down from that?
What was the standard?
We don't know. We have never done this before. All right. Beth, will you plug that in, and then we might have you just email out to the teacher advisory group to confirm that they didn't have something else in mind. They didn't talk about it as a collective group. It just came up as an idea, and I want to say Deborah Belmonte had agreed to maybe write something up, but I know that she's been out recently.
Is it 1,500 monthly, weekly, daily?
I think it's just for the semester.
Yeah.
Just for the semester.
Would it be paid out at the end of each semester, do you think, so they don't?
Yeah, we
get
don't
paid
have to
in-
get into the how of that. You know,
Okay.
that could come, somebody else can decide those. We've got enough to decide on the money part. So we'll just live there for a little bit. But you're right, all more questions will come out of this. All right, let's roll. We gotta go. Oh, there it is, increasing guest teacher rate pay. All right, so scroll up, we'll let you read that descriptor. And when she gets that over there, if you just tab over, there you go. So Mr. Nuttall was able to list in there what the current conditions are. And then you see down below what the proposed is. Crystal says she likes that. You're gonna have to say why, so be prepared to say why. We'll get a microphone ready for you. The rest of you keep reading. All right, if you'll make that just a smidgen smaller so they can see the end of that cell. Okay, sorry, that might have been a little small, but just for this one, we'll bump back in a minute. I do know that we have done much better with vacancies with teachers this year, but we are still struggling with middle school. And we do struggle more with Title I schools than our non-Title I schools. So you know, those are two conditions that have been a struggle. The other consideration for however high you make that top pay for guest teachers is what we don't want it to do is to come equal to or too close to the amount of a beginning teacher salary. Because those teachers are responsible for planning, for grading, for parent-teacher conferences. They have all the full responsibilities of a teacher. And so there still needs to be some gap between that. And we also want to remain competitive, because that's one of the biggest frustrations for our teachers is when the vacancies are not filled. All right, so say more about what you think about this or any questions you have that we need to clean up the descriptor. Crystal, we're going to start with you, and we need a microphone. Yes, it comes with a microphone.
I've never really used a microphone before. I like it for two reasons. One, it looks a little more in line with what other districts are paying their guest teachers. I also love the piece where we're eliminating if you work less than 15 days, you get this rate, then 15 days or over, you get this rate, because that was kind of a nightmare to track and pay. So I like it.
Anyone else? Okay. No questions, no comments? We're going to keep rolling, but I don't want to discourage any conversation.
What are other districts' current rate for their subs around our area?
Buckeye gets raised there from 165. In town, it's 175.
Resource teachers, Heather's not here tonight. She was concerned about the number of resource teachers. Some of the issue we have faced this year with resource teachers is we just weren't able to hire them. It wasn't so much that we didn't have the positions or they weren't budgeted. It was really more about not being able to hire them and be fully staffed. So that's a piece. I will say that we are budgeting for an increase in special education staff for next year, just purely based on enrollment. And with special education staff, we start to try to hire now, just offer them a contract, even start them early this year and have them help out however we could if we were able to find them, even if we were fully staffed. So we try to be as proactive as we can with that. Talking with our special education director, she's thinking that really we're probably fine if we're fully staffed and we are budgeting appropriately for the increased staffing, which we have built that in. So I think when Heather's with us next week, we'll just ask her to make sure there's nothing else we were understanding or not understanding, and then she can say whether this one should stay in there or should not stay in here. Anything else anybody else would add, maybe from your own experience with special education in the district for resource teachers?
I guess I just have one question.
Yeah, microphone, sorry.
The one question I have is, why were we not able to hire for them positions? Was it because of money, or was it because just don't have the people to do it? That's what I was wondering.
In talking with HR, they've been saying no one else was able to hire them either. So it's, even if their thoughts, if we're putting even more money to it, I don't know that we would have gotten a different outcome. That's an unfortunate piece. So in line 6, we don't have a dollar amount. Did you have those? Did we pass those out? You were working, great. The cost, there's no specific cost here. I can tell you that Beth isn't accurate. It's around $68,000 per teacher when you do the average amount that we hire at plus their benefits, which is kind of costly. So it sounds like it's a lot more than what our average teacher makes, but it's because of the benefit cost. So if you will add to line G6, cell G6, why don't we just put a $68,000 amount there until we talk to Heather and see what she's thinking. All right, Natasha, you have the next one.
Sure. So this budget interest is to increase the pay for reading interventionists. And one of the
microphone, sorry. You guys rumble.
Do you know your name? Okay. This budget interest is to increase the pay for reading interventionists, and mainly to have more of a teacher leader pathway. So many of our teachers who are wanting to move into a coaching position and a teacher leader outside of the classroom, this would be something that they could potentially do. Plus, they do have to have a reading. Thank you very much. They do have to have a reading endorsement for this position. And our reading interventionists are taking more of a leadership position. And so I'd like to see that they are compensated equitably for kind of the succession steps of leadership. And that was the purpose for this one. I did put in a 5% increase in pay. That's just some number I made up. And it looks like you all have put some red information in there.
Beth, can you use the microphone and speak a little bit more to that? What the
I did.
cost would be?
So the red information is I did an average of the reading interventionists that we have now, and off of that gave a 5% increase, so it'd be $1,750 for the 5, so a total of $8,750 for all 5 of them. So if we're looking at something different, more than happy to go back and figure out what that is.
Do you have questions for Natasha? All right, Dave, you're next.
So over the years, what typically happens for us is that we raise the hiring schedule, but we don't do anything to people in the middle. So if you raise it 2 or 3 years in a row, a first-year teacher makes the same as a teacher who's been here 4 or 5 years. So we typically, and that number is not even close to hitting that dollar amount because it's a lot of people. So
Okay, so that's, I know that Kelly always worked to make sure that didn't happen, so I'd like to, we can work with you afterwards to understand where that's happening and see it. Then that would help us identify how much would that cost to right size that if you have that problem.
Is that the compacting? Is that what we're talking about?
yes. So what happens is that it happened when I first got hired here. So Turner would pay me this amount, and then 3 years later, even though I was still making merit, a new teacher was making the same amount. So I just told him, I'm quitting. And he's like, why? I said, because I can wait, and you can hire me back, and I'll make more money than I am. Doesn't make any sense that I put in my time here, and I'm still getting a rate increase, cost of living, merit pay, but I'm making the same amount of teacher as a new teacher's making.
I know that one of the things that when that hiring schedule was made, even let's say we gave 2% in our contracts last year, the starting at the zero experience, we did put 2% to that in order to make sure, and then we'd watch to make sure how it played out across the board to make sure that didn't happen. But I think I'm concerned that you're thinking, obviously you're talking to people where you can feel like that has happened. So we need to check on that and see what that is. So from an equity standpoint, that would be an important piece. But so I think what I hear you saying then is we don't really know until we identify what that is.
I can share several examples from Westar campus.
I think that'd be great. So that budget interest cost, you're thinking that maybe that's potentially $500 to $1,500 per person potentially.
Correct.
To look at. Okay. Natasha?
I have a question, Beth, back to mine. I see that it's $1,750 times 5, but we do have 7 reading interventionists. So we have 1 at each campus.
However, those are paid from ESSER funds, so that would be an ESSER budget impact versus a maintenance and operation budget impact. So I think you can keep it at 5, but make a note that if this was to be prioritized and adopted, it would have to be impacted with ESSER. ESSER would have to be able to support the other part of it. Good catch.
Correct, and that is in the note that I did. It says about the split funding.
Mr. Bogart, pay step increases.
So when you take a look at our pay increases for years of service, there's only $500. And I thought maybe we should look at what surrounding districts are doing. And I think we're offering up to 10 years of experience currently. And maybe we should consider doing 20 years since there's a teacher shortage, and maybe even matching salary from another district.
I thought I saw 15 for 15 years. Are we able to go to 15 years now? I just looked at the salary you sent out.
So we currently have 15 years of experience for special education teachers and instructional coaches, and currently have approved for 10 years for teachers, right? However, we also, administration has also been looking at this, thinking, that's our opportunity to be able to recruit from other places that might come to us. But we have to consider, again, what Mr. Bogart was saying before, we have to consider then who are the people that we brought on at 10 years that are between 10 and 15 years right now, that we would need to right size them. So that's truly the known cost is how to right size those people. So we have been studying that, and that's actually something we're proposing to bring back to our governing board to implement sooner than later. To do that, because that will put us in a position for hiring here in the spring, and we would do that out of this year's current budget. But I still would like to put it here because there's a chance that they won't do that. And I just want to make sure that we are still studying the cost of that. And it may be that when we hear that, that there's something that's prioritized by you, it's much higher, and maybe that's not something we should be doing this year. There's something that's a lot more important for us to be considering. So let's keep that in there, even though we're considering that for this year. We were only looking at 15 years because when we looked at the 20-year, we looked at this about 2 months ago, it bumped way up in how much it cost us. So we thought, well, incrementally, we could at least get from 10 to 15 was our thought. So Dave, can you be specific about what you would like to see this be as? Do you want us to model this at 15, 20? What do you think?
It would be nice to see a model for both of those. What I'm worried about is I'm hearing through some of my colleagues that are principals in other districts that they're looking at matching current contracts amounts for other teachers.
When we match current amount, that sounds like the right thing to do to bring on the employee. But now you talk about the inequities for the people that are here. You're right. Then they're in a position. Do I have to leave, come back, and all of that? That's when we will absolutely generate a lot more. Now, you can say, if we are desperate for a special education teacher or a middle school math teacher at a Title I school, maybe we should have authorization from the governing board to just say, we are going to match that salary and do what it takes. We need to put a teacher in there, because when we pay for a virtual teacher that's, I'm just gonna say it's not effective, and it's 1.5 times as much as what we would have still paid, maybe it's still the right thing to do, or we pay a contract service teacher. We're still paying a whole lot more, but we are preventing the inequity with our own employees, and that's certainly a cultural issue. The matching of salary, I think that will have to be a policy. I don't know how to estimate that for money. Unless you have an idea of that.
Yeah.
So your budget interest title, can we change that to be 15-year? We'll just do them as 2 separate interests, Beth. One will be a 15-year, allowing up to 15 years, and how do we right size our staff? How much will that cost? And how much would it cost at 20 years is what Mr. Bogart's asking. Okay. Let's split those two. Mr. Bogart, you're on a roll.
Yeah,
Extra specials teachers per school.
So my worry for next year as an instructional leader in the district is that we're going to have a difficult time providing some PLC times and also some professional development. And so I was hoping that we could consider if we added an additional full-time or half-time person at each campus for a specials, that you could block times in a special schedule where you could give teachers a 2-period block of time, maybe once a week. So it doesn't necessarily have to be completely a full-time person. As an example, Westar has 3.3, but if you went to 4.0, it would create some additional time in the schedule to allow grade level bands to have 1 double prep a week. And I can tell you that that's when you have a shorter amount of time for their prep, all they're doing is going to the restroom, making copies, and that's about it.
So you've got $406,000. So she modeled this as if you had 8 teacher times 7 schools. I agree with you, it wouldn't cost as much as that. I can play with that, support Beth with saying how much that would cost. It's a really interesting idea. It's something I did at Glenda Elementary in the past. I teach them how to schedule it and how to model it. I don't think it'll be as expensive as that, and we can look at that. I think another thing to consider, I've been looking at how to model the master schedules for next year with specials, and depending on whether we go to a 10-period day or an 11-period day. And when I modeled it both ways, the advantage of the 10-period day is that the prep time turns into about 45 to 46 minutes instead of 40 minutes, so that's a nice thing. The disadvantage is we only have 8 periods a day. You've got 9 grade levels. Now you've got some mixed up grade levels for common preps. So that's the plus and minus there. The other aspect of the 11 period day, so with 9 specials periods throughout the day, similar to what most schools are on now, it would be 40 minutes. It would be an increase from last year, be restoring it back to the 40 minutes. When I modeled it based on our enrollment and our reduced class size maximums, we had more, let's say a school needed 3.25 teachers, and this one needs a 3.33. Well, you can bump those up to say 3.5, and you're either hiring a half-time person or you're splitting 2 schools, and Steve may hate to do the travel. So where did it come out cleaner to a whole position? It came out much cleaner and probably more successful in being able to hire for it with the 11 period day and the 40-minute prep. So I'm thinking right now from a standpoint of our ability to hire and have people actually be in those positions instead of having vacancies for them, that's probably where we'll end up being at. But I could also model it with this idea, and I can try it with both ways and just play with it and see if I could make something work better than another. So I'll play with it and see what I can bring back to you. So Beth, will you just keep a note for us there? It's our homework. Our homework list is to model a different way of doing specials and helps. Thank you, Dave, for that idea. All right, we've got one more. It looks like math coach.
Yeah, I didn't want this one to be left off the table because we talked about it the last time we were here. Is we've added a lot of responsibility in the work that we're doing with LEDC, and that's just requiring a little more work on the instructional coaches on our campuses. So I just threw that one out there as an additional instructional coach on each campus for math.
If I told you right now that $406,000 is more than the total number of increase of dollars we'll be able to play with after we preserve 2% compensation, is there any adjustment anybody would suggest to this? Versus all schools versus some schools?
Will it be K through 8 or just specifically K through 3rd and then?
Well, I have more ideas than that. So you could actually do a stipend for a current teacher as opposed to just doing a full teaching position, and then provide them with release time through the sub pay, through the permanent sub. So you could reduce that. There's several ways that you could run that. I just put it in there on the high end, and I think that each school could pick. We didn't do K3 LEDC last year. Okay. We touched on it in some schools. So it's a little more readily workable at the upper grades, if you know what I'm saying. And I just think we have some work to do in the K3.
So then I would say that one budget interest is one per school. Looks like math is right for $406,000. A different budget interest would be for a stipend for a teacher, and if we had to manage for some release time. So we have to create another budget interest for that variation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you could piggyback it on the extra specials teacher, and then you could just let that person take their double prep and be that spot.
Okay, so it's still a different budget interest. So Dave or anybody else who wants to jump in for that other idea, I'll have to work with Beth for one more.
Okay.
But yes, I think he's being creative about now. We don't think we can afford this much. Would we do something different? Or would a larger school or a Title I school say, hey, I know I love the idea for all 7, but we've got some different needs here for everybody else, and maybe we just try to get one that's shared between 2 schools, and can we get that through instead? So that's another budget. So anybody here, as you're thinking about these things, we may need to put in some variation here for what options would work. Does anybody want to pick up any of those? Care about any of those moving forward? Not
I'll do it.
Take this one idea or two ideas.
All right, let's see, line 11. Yes, go ahead.
On the 58,000, is that salary or is that fully burdened, including benefits and
That's the average cost per teacher in the district, including benefits.
including?
And I know I saw $68,000 someplace else, so we just need to be consistent about what that number really is. See where your question is from. Thank you. Okay, what's this one?
So I think this one goes along with what I have proposed for the reading interventionist. So this also is just delineating further leadership succession planning. So if we are delineating leadership positions by increase in salary, then we would do the same thing for our instructional coaches. So when you think about steps in that succession planning, Sarah was suggesting, did you say 10%?
Yes.
Okay.
Conversation. Question. Variation of this budget interest.
I would tell you, that, from experience from this year alone, is that we were fortunate at Westar to get what we got based on pay. I'm just telling you, 10% would be nice, but I think if we looked at what the pay rate is in other districts, it's a little bit more.
So I would say then for Sarah and Natasha that that could be part of a rationale. If you have any information from other districts of how they hire, so if somebody was going to apply here versus someplace else, are they paid at the same rate as a teacher, or is it a different hiring structure? That would provide some further rationale for the description. I think that question came up on another one, the comparison of the rate for guest teachers, Beth. Christy asked about the comparative guest teacher rates in some surrounding school districts. I think that would be good to add to that descriptor as well to fully explain that. All right, Ollie is also not with us tonight, line 12. Can you just scroll over just so we can see what the description is, the title? Tiny print one. This is a 1.0 instructional coach for Liberty Elementary School. She's listed $58,000, but actually we have, I want to say it's funded already at 0.66. I have to go back and look. That was actually in our budget. So this would actually be a 0.33 increase. So if you'll just make that note, adjustment, Beth. I will tell you some background for Liberty Elementary School. They are small. They only have 300 students for this next year. So they do have far fewer teachers than the other schools. But they do not have a full-time assistant. They don't have an assistant principal at all, and neither does Estrella. So, just it provides some additional support to the principal and the teachers. I'm trying to fund the colleague for us here. So this is a one school in particular request. Anyone else have anything they would add to that in terms of comment or questions? Yeah, so there is, right now, the position is split between a unique unicorn, beautiful person that we have is teaching 1/3 PE, and then, 2/3 instructional coach. So we increased that to full-time. We would be in a position to have a full-time music teacher at the school. And even if we increase it to 2 full-time positions in special areas, we still aren't really giving them art, music, and PE expert, if you will, content area. So they have to do some crossover. So we know that we would have to also give some additional support in special areas. So it might have that might actually just be its own budget interest to keep that separate, because they aren't necessarily tied together because of the position how we would also design it. That's just who the unique person we have that happens to be able to fill both those things. So that would be a separate budget interest to increase that from 0.33 to 0.5 or 0.33 to 1.0. So I hear your point, Crystal. So if you might help Beth with just the budget interest, just for special area, just for that consideration, because they do kind of go together. Other questions? All right. Student services coordinator position. Jason is not here. As we have grown in the district, all human resource issues, legal issues, police issues, incident reports, all of that, no matter what it is, that all funnel through the assistant superintendent's office. Additionally, every single student issue or parent issue concern that comes up from all the discipline issues that happen at schools, those also funnel through that office. And we do not have an HR director in the school district, so that is also a responsibility there. So our executive director with for special services, I always get the titles mixed up. Special services also has responsibility for counselors. So one idea that lives a little bit off of both, and probably more off of the assistant superintendent to be able to do more of the HR functions, is that a position was created to have those things bubble up to an additional support person for that. I don't know if I did a good job with that. Principals, but would you have anything to add? Natasha, anything to add? Questions? Misunderstanding about one. Okay. All right, lunch duty cafeteria. It's my favorite one because it shows up every single year we do budget. We all think it's a good idea to have it on the list. So somebody who's been on the committee before, tell why, use the microphone and say why this has come up as
So I currently do this duty every day, and I do love opening milk and helping cute little kindergartners. But really, my expertise is in working with children educationally, and if I had somebody inside of a cafeteria instead of myself, Mr. Bogart, you definitely could put me to use working one-to-one with kids, increasing academic achievement, and I'd probably be more successful than opening milk some days. That's, I think, why it always gets put on. I know in the past, we've had a variety of different things. I've been here long enough that we've had some support in the cafeteria. We've also had days when, we had somebody in there making copies for us. So sometimes this just takes something off of professional plates that help us stay doing what we're supposed to be doing, which is working with students. So I think that's why it's on there every year.
All right. Connie, I'm going to ask you to say a little bit more about, I don't know if you're the one who did the money, but we need to model how much time, how many people for that amount of time, times how many campuses, so we can say how much money that would be. So Sarah and Danae had both said something real similar on lunchtime duty aids that comes down below, and that was modeled a little bit differently. That's when we actually had 2 separate budget entries. So I just want to make sure that that is describing what you had in mind for that budget interest.
It certainly
could be, but I also see what they're kind of, I'm just looking ahead at theirs. I was thinking that this person may be able to be coupled with other positions, like if you've got your unicorn position over there, doing PE, maybe you can, get some other help in other ways. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around it because if you're doing a 4-day week, maybe this is something that you can couple with other positions to formulate something else on the campus. It could be having a full-time aide that's doing it rather than a teacher, so you could maybe utilize that aide that way. I was thinking more of a lower cost, I think, because of the fact that I was looking at more probably, aide level type person there. And I don't know what they were using there.
Beth, I think we have to get more specific about the hourly rate.
Right. So entry level, I was thinking it would probably be entry level.
You want to describe what level on the support staff wage schedule, so that would determine the hourly rate.
I can look that up.
The number of hours times the number of schools.
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll use the formula that's there in cell G16, which is the hourly rate times the 148 days times the total hours times the campuses. So if you can help me with that, I'd appreciate that, with the number that you're thinking about.
Okay.
I suspect that Blue's gonna have a longer lunch period. I don't think you need 4 hours. Start serving lunch at Westar at 10:30 and we're done just before 1.
It's more like 3.
Yeah.
So,
But because Blue's got 900 kids, I'm sure that
there may be.
cafeteria accommodates more.
It doesn't. All right, so just if we can add the information on both of these, the support staff wage schedule, which level, so people would be really clear about what level it is, and then specific number of hours, number of people, and number of schools. Yes, please do today.
Let me get you a microphone. When I discussed this with Beth, we decided that it would be a level 3 because the extra duties that I was thinking of was kind of like a liaison for the work orders from the school side to the district offices, because there is a bit of a communication gap, and if there's simple troubleshooting things that person can be taught, which means things get fixed instantaneously, and it creates a better work environment for the teachers instead of waiting half a day to hit Windows P because they don't know how to display.
So tell me this, are you thinking of a support staff person who would help with the work order system and would help with lunch duty supervision?
And the lunch duty backed up when the custodian's gone, and then you did do those pulling the street signs, so Kevin isn't running too.
An extra person to help with.
Good idea.
Okay. All right, so in the budget interest title, we'll probably, jack of all trades, miscellaneous, do BC grant, do whatever. So if you would work with Beth for a descriptor that includes your broader idea than just lunch duty supervision. Is that okay? All right, does anybody have any questions or comments for today on, that was the next one down. All right, special services coordinator, our executive director of, I gotta say it right, special services, is responsible for, why don't you take this one, Natasha? Okay. We need a microphone.
Okay, special services coordinator. So the executive director of special services is responsible for all of special education, nurses, counselors, OTPT, contract services. This is actually to support in mainly compliance of special education. And then professional development for special education teachers. We have quite a few new special education teachers who need additional support with writing IEPs to the level of specificity of the state mandate. So this person would be working directly with the executive director, but really making sure that we stay in compliance and out of corrective action.
Which is where we are right now.
Which is where we are right now.
Also, the executive director is responsible, let me see if I can get this right, homeless, migrant, counselors, nurses, health services in general, 504s, child study, yes. There's quite a bit there. All right. Junior network administrator, we're checking on this, but I think this may be a choice for the director to shift dollars in the departmental budget that's being used for purchase service to buy out that support that we've been doing. That might be more cost effective to bring that into the district. So it might not actually be a budget add, it might just be a budget transfer. So we'll get more information on that. Is that okay, John? Yeah. Beth, do you want to speak to business services?
I will. So I put this in here for consideration for a mid-level manager, also for succession planning, and to be able to cross-train with everybody in the department so that when we do have somebody out sick or we have a resignation, we've got somebody on board that can help with that piece of it. So that poor Crystal doesn't have to come back in and do payroll. This person would also be more involved in the day-to-day operations to allow my position to do the higher level work with school facilities board and capital planning and those sorts of things.
I think other districts have an accountant that does all of the journal entries and the accounting aspects of that. So it looks like that would be supported there. Support liaison. Anybody have any questions about the business position? Comments?
Yep, that's the thing that's okay. I would just add, I think it's important to know that in business services, even though we have had growth, they have not hired anyone else to support. So that is something that they're wearing many hats.
So I do think for some of these departmental lines that we need to add what is kind of the business benchmark, if you will, across districts of how many positions per how many employees or how many positions per how many students that show us are we right size, are we in the sweet spot now already with our staffing and we don't need more according to these benchmarks, or we are seriously understaffed compared to what this is, or also in the rationale if we are kind of on average about how much we spend in that budget area, if we're on average with that, or are we underspending compared to other districts? And that's another way of seeing that perhaps, if you all are feeling like, oh, we are dying here, then we can also demonstrate that are we underspending what other districts do in that area, and that is true. We are very lean. So I think we're going to need to have something in there to demonstrate why we'd be lean in addition to the rationale. Does that seem reasonable? So Beth, where you find any of those positions, work with those department heads to gather some of that information. because we're, as you can see, with these, we're not gonna be able to hire, we're not gonna be able to do all of those. We might not even be able to do one of them with the dollars available, so you all are tasked with a really tough decision, some recommendations that come from here in the room of what to do or not to. Okay, support liaison Danae, so this was split up. So Danae, you were thinking that the support liaison person would be the same as the person who's doing the new duty support, or do you think those should be separate interests?
I think it could be one person.
One person, all right. Will you work with Beth to just make sure that's represented as it makes sense? Can you, so the $122,000 that's identified here, did you come up with that or did Beth come up with that? Beth did? All right. So Neil's have to work to see maybe it won't be as costly as that. Then it goes fine. Other questions, comments from everybody else? All right, we're getting there, guys. Teacher's salary. Put money on the table for teacher salary, says the principal of Freedom. Everybody was kind of going to agree. What we need to do here is say, I think the easiest way to work from it is saying, what is a 1% increase? And then you all can multiply that up for just to know how much that amount would be. Okay. Do you have a sense of that off the top of your head, or do we need to research that now? This would be 1% for teachers. We built in a 2% already as a placeholder for you all to consider. And if we cut that in half, we would know what that 1% amount is. Do you recall from the other sheet?
Is it from 2%? 1% was 212,589. I wrote it down, I guess it was increase.
So you're thinking from our other conversation would be 212,000 for 1%? 1%. All right. Well, let's just do a placeholder for that, and she can confirm it later. How about that? So $212,000 in the description. I think we're going to have to say a little bit more, but then put money on the table. Teacher salary schedule. We'll probably need a little explanation there for. Would somebody be willing to help Beth with the descriptor for recruitment, retention, that kind of language? Great. That. Dave, extracurricular, soccer playground and fields.
Is it on? I suspect that Westar is not the only place that's running into this priority, because I've watched what's happened at the Liberty campus. So because we have more and more kids using our campuses and more activities going on, the grounds at all schools, in my opinion, need to be addressed. I think Jason's got a game plan for that, and I think Kevin's aware of what that might be. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a super high priority, but I just felt it needed to be something that's out there.
Well, when they do the soil sample work, that very well probably could show up in M&O.
Yeah, we did a soil sample at Westar, and that has to be addressed before we can. There's no sense putting grass there if it's not going to grow in the soil that's there.
I agree with you. I think there is some work underway in the current budget, but let's leave it there, and so Jason can address what's still left undone after this year that may need to be budgeted additionally for next year. Does that make sense? So I don't know how to model that for a cost either. So Beth will just have to work with Jason to see what some of the estimates have been. Okay, I can tell you, Beth, you may have to help me of others that I've heard that people are trying to work on right now. One is a budget interest, thinking of one way we recruit routine employees is based on compensation, but perhaps another way is based on benefits. Benefits currently, there is a completely free benefit for the employee. Our district does not charge our employees for a portion of that. We pay 100%. So I don't think there's anything that we're proposing would be any change to that. But another benefit opportunity that some employers may offer is maybe they pay for benefits for the spouse. What would that be if we offered that for all employees? what would it be if we paid for even a portion of family insurance, right? So what we consider here then is how many employees would that actually impact or benefit? How much do we think that would cost? And then we have to weigh that out against, just like all the other budget interests, which one is more valuable or more beneficial to the district for our purposes for either. Obviously our first priority is what's going to impact us educationally, impacting learning. And a real close second after that is going to be what helps us recruit, retain quality staff. And then maybe above all that, certainly above all that would be safety, security issues. And then we might be looking at what's just efficient operations of our district, a fourth priority level. So your task, and we'll give you a little time to talk and just use some free thinking on this. We'll make sure that any of the other ones that need to be added are here. You can expect an email within 48 hours. That's our commitment. Really by the end of the day tomorrow is what we really need to do to get this back out to you so we can give you time over the weekend. Your job is then going to be to rate these, and probably they're going to rate each one so that we're going to combine all of your information of what your ratings are, and then we will come up with a listed out sequence of all of these plus any others, and that'll all be prioritized. And we'll be comparing that against our budget dollars available, and then also potentially any recommendations we would have to use one-time funds out of our reserves, frankly, because that was really pretty critical to happen for next year. So I just want to make sure that you don't have any other questions about these besides the ones we know that will give you some background information on. Dave?
I have a question. In the past, we know how much is there, and so when we started listing our priorities, it would just subtract it right out.
And we'll be doing that next week.
Thank you.
Is there, I know another, I might have skipped it in our agenda, so my apologies if I did that. I did skip that. So I moved on to start to talk about our next steps. Let me go back to 40 school week staff hours and compensation budget options. We are really just working to do our best to design work calendars and the number of hours people work to as closely as possible break even. So we're not trying to come up with something where we have a budget savings that you all would then be like, oh, cool, we've got some more money to play with here. And we're certainly trying not to cost more money to break into the money that you're trying to prioritize. So we're really trying to do it so that it doesn't have an impact on the maintenance and operations budget. So I would just say that I know you were wanting some more information because I think you recognize that plays into all this decision. So where we aren't able to make it work by the number of days they work and the number of hours they work, and they're still leaving kind of money that would be harming our employees, we're looking at how to take that, let's say it's $30,000 that it ends up being a budget savings. How can we push that money right back into the support staff wage schedule so that it may not make them whole, but it still gives them more money to give back to employees where the savings came from? Is that still your philosophy about how we should be attacking the use of our support staff? If there's any savings to support staff wages going from a 5-day to a 4-day? I just want to hear a little conversation about that.
I definitely would support that. I was on that committee, and that was one of the things that we, talked about as a whole, is that we certainly don't want to lose those people, and they already make so little anyway. And so giving them this bump up, which would be a good thing because they've gotten so little for so long, and that, their meager increases, this would keep them here. And I think, we've got support staff that we've had for 20 years, and that says a lot that they've stuck around with us. So I think it's a nice way to return that to them.
I agree.
So, and we're at a shortage, so maybe if they feel valued and see like, oh, they're really going above and beyond, then they would encourage other people to come work for us, and that's what we definitely need, so.
So unless we put a budget interest forward for support staff and additional increases beyond, beyond, what's here, then it wouldn't be an increase, but we're trying as much as possible to try to keep them whole. And I will tell you, I know right now we won't be able to do that for all. So there's, we have some concerns about food service, one, because that it's up their own budget. The revenue comes in from kids buying lunches. If they don't buy lunches on Friday, there is no revenue for that. So if we were to try to keep them whole, that would be a negative, that would be a budget interest of a cost of quite a bit of dollars to be able to do that. And then what would you have them do? Because they no longer working on those yes, if they'd be willing to, they can't do lunch duty because they're working already. So some of these other ideas, how to swap them out, but it would be an increased cost to help them do additional. So that's an example, but a lot of the other ones, the more we work on it, the closer we come. So we'll keep working on it until we get the best solution possible. Okay, so tell me now with next steps, we're going to meet on December 6th. That's just 5 days away. That's where we're going to get you this information to push out to you tomorrow. So you've got over the weekend, Monday to look at it. And you're going to submit your scores or ratings, if you will, ahead of time before the meeting, because we're going to print out to you our group ratings of all this. And we as a group are going to prioritize those and perhaps make some further adjustments based on the dollars. Now with kind of the hard reality set in, we'll make some other adjustments to budget, just maybe make some carved out new ones, and we'll do that hard work. If you can plan on staying a little bit late on that day, I'll buy you all some dinner to keep you. It won't be great, but it'll be something. But just, I'd like to just keep us until we get a good recommendation. So let's also talk about your roles, going back to the people that you are talking with. So, this, as you go back, you can talk to people about, I encourage you to talk to people about the kinds of budget interests you've heard, and they go, well, how come nobody thought of this one? Well, great, it's not too late. We can add it. If we need to add something else on the 6th, we will, because really, we want all the good ideas. So if you're still talking to people, you can still submit them in to Beth in the same way we're doing the other ones. But we do want you continuing to loop out and have conversations around this.
I have a question. I was just looking at what's up there and what was here, and Blue Horizons reading interventionist, and I also noticed it's in a different color. Is the reason why that's not on the paper, is it because it's maybe already been considered?
It was just submitted.
Sorry.
It was just submitted this afternoon.
It will show up in those. Do you want
Oh,
to say
okay.
more about that so they know what that one's about?
Here's her microphone.
As I'm sure you're aware, with our new school, we've really blown up this year, so we have close to 900 students. Currently, intervention is provided K-3, and there is 450 students in that grade level and one full-time interventionist, which is me, and I do have a full-time para, and I'm really seeing the need to go beyond third grade, but there's just not enough hours and people, unfortunately, on our campus. So Ms. Kaser and I added that based off of that, because as our kids move on, they still need that tier 2 and that tier 3, and we need to push into 4-8.
They just make a statement with no.
So they are currently funded for 1.5. So it may need to be a budget adjustment of an additional 0.5.
Would that be okay if we modeled it at 0.5 and that dollar amount 1.5? Would you like to
The 0.5 position has been posted since October, and we haven't had anyone apply for it. So, but you're adding the additional 0.5 is what you're saying? Okay. Okay.
And so if we add to the budget more attractive to be able to approve some of these acquisitions. Would that much interest? So right now, there's not a dollar amount.
I wasn't sure because I know like Title I pays for me, so I didn't quite know what to put. So I put Title I or 48,000.
All right, we'll model that at 0.5. Do you have that back? Right. Okay, so tell me what you're gonna do. What you promised to do before we come back.
Sleep. You all need to talk to our people.
Talk to your people, prioritize, and get any other final budget interest in. Best case scenario by tomorrow, so it's all on one sheet. But we'll take them all the way up to our next meeting. Is that okay? All right. And if you can't stay late at the next one, that's okay. You're just important voice that we heard to the bitter end. But we'll see you all on the 6th.
Just one more question.
Yes.
On the 4-day school week, sorry. Will the schools be dark on that 5th day?
So I think you're looking at utility savings perhaps. About approximately 2 Fridays per month they will be, but 2 Fridays are the teachers and some of the staff will still be working.
Okay.
So we initially did a little bit of a budget savings around that for utilities, but because it turned into so little, we thought, let's wait and see, and then going forward in the future, we can be sure about that.
Sure.
But we will be putting in to the budget for the fixed costs, a little add back for how much we're spending on fuel for transportation. So that's gonna be a little add back in there for the 4 day. All right, everyone. I don't want to hold you up. You're getting home to your families. Thank you all.
Kevin, it's always great to sit.